Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. I want to get right into it. Today, we are looking at the first day of being back in session in the state of Vermont. The legislature is back in session, so there's going to be a lot to talk about for the next few months. But I wanted to bring up one of the bills that I know is going to get at least a little bit of attention because looking at, this is January 5, Vermont Daily Chronicle by Guy Page. Freeze property taxes for 3 years, one legislator proposes. The member of the Vermont House of Representatives is proposing legislation to freeze property taxes for 3 years while the state of Vermont implements education funding reform. Property taxpayers face a 12% increase next year if spending remains status quo, the Scott administration reported last month. Governor Scott has recommended drawing on reserve funding to reduce the impact of the likely increase. Okay, let's look at what this tax proposal is. Representative Gina Galfetti, Republican from Barrytown, says skyrocketing education costs and rising property taxes have pushed many Vermonters to the brink. And that is an understatement, ladies and gentlemen, prompting her to propose a 3-year freeze on property tax rates while lawmakers work on longer-term reforms. The legislature reconvenes today. This says tomorrow, but today, Tuesday, January 6th. We have no bills posted as of January 5, but tomorrow, beginning session, I believe, is at 10 o'clock. So sometime after that, then we will start to see new bills posted. It is likely that such legislation would appeal to many House Republicans, less so to most Democrats. My question, if I can break from the argument, why? Why is it so unpalatable to find ways to freeze or reduce taxes? There's got to be ways that we can find. Anybody who tells me there's no way we can trim the budget, there's no way we can find ways to give people relief, just doesn't make sense to me. In a statement released today and published as a commentary in today's VDC, Galvetti said Vermonters are, quote, beyond our breaking point when it comes to affordability, end quote, arguing that recent efforts to overhaul the state's education system have stalled and left taxpayers exposed to continued increases. Governor Scott proposed a sweeping education reform package last year, and lawmakers created a special committee made up of legislators and non-legislators to redraw school districts and recommend structural changes. Galfetti said the committee failed to complete its assignment over the summer, blaming majority Democrats for refusing to move forward on district consolidation. Quote, that is the reality of what happened over the summer, end quote, Galfetti said. She acknowledged that school and administrative consolidations are unpopular, but said they are necessary to control costs. Quote, at the end of the day, the idea is to save taxpayers money, end quote, Galfetti said. That means we need to optimize, streamline, and cut. Galfetti's proposal would freeze property tax rates for 3 years, preventing any increases during that period. She stresses that the plan is not reform and not a solution, but it would give Vermonters time to survive while lawmakers address what she called a broken system. And I would say, I agree. The system is broken. If it wasn't broken, ladies and gentlemen, we'd be happy with the student outcomes. We'd be happy with the grades and the ability of the kids when it comes to grade level reading and math and other scores. And the system's obviously broken because we're watching the scores falter, if not fall. Under the bill, any increases in education spending during the freeze would have to be covered by the state's general fund rather than through higher property taxes. Galfetti said those costs would be spread evenly across all general fund budget items rather than targeting specific programs. No favorites here, she said. calling the approach a large dose of reality and stark fiscal reminder of the consequences of unchecked spending. Galfetti criticized the state's education funding system, noting that school spending has continued to rise even as student enrollment and test scores have declined. Quote, the system is not working for the kids or the taxpayers, end quote. Speaking personally, Galfetti said she owns a small painting company, does not have health insurance, and struggles to pay her mortgage. Quote, I know I am one of the lucky ones, she said. She urged Vermonters to pressure their representatives, especially as federal funding remains uncertain. Galfetti cited comments made by Senate President Pro Tem Phil Baruth at a December legislative fiscal briefing, where he said that the state would step in to cover any federal shortfalls. Quote, Vermont doesn't have a large bags of cash or bars of gold stashed in the state house cellar, Galfetti said, warning that the state lacks the taxing capacity to absorb major federal cuts. Calling the moment dark and complicated times, Galfetti said affordability must be the legislator's top priority. The race is on to save this state, she said, and we will all need to work together to make that happen. Well, I agree we all need to work together. Like was alluded to in the article here, the task force that was given the task to come up with 3 different maps for redistricting didn't come up with those maps. So there's that problem that we have in the legislature beginning, well, it would be today as you're hearing this, so January 6th. So in the first month or two, we're going to have to try to figure out where we go from here, because one of the first hurdles is the redistricting, and we didn't have that. One of the other things we have is, I think it's still going to wind up being a big issue with respect to education reform, is school choice. School choice is very limited in Act 73, and I think we're seeing now that towns that do have school choice are very concerned about losing their ability to maintain the school choice that they have. Other towns see towns that have school choice and want to get in on that option, and I don't blame them. If we're going to have quote-unquote equity in education in this state, we need statewide school choice, plain and simple. H89, the bill is on the wall, ladies and gentlemen, and like Representative Galfetti said, pressure from the electorate, from the people, the taxpayers, people with children in school and people without children in school. If you're a taxpayer, if you're a landowner, you need to be letting your legislator know that, number one, they need to be looking at affordability and not looking to constantly raise taxes every time they deem that there needs to be another program or more money in a program. We need to find ways to trim the budget, not expand the budget. We're at, Gina Galfetti is correct. We are at a breaking point here. Just raising more taxes, just billing people more isn't going to fix it. So, getting involved, going on legislature.vermont.gov, finding your legislator, find the legislators that are in the education committee, and send them an email, a polite email. Tell them how you feel about what's going on with Act 73. Tell them that you want your property taxes not to continue to go up. Tell them that you want your kids' test scores in the state of Vermont, which at one time were at the top, in the top level among the states, which are not. I think we're in the lower half now, that you want them improved. So it's not just the taxes, it's the outcomes also that are a bother to a lot of people. So this is, again, and we're going to talk about more topics than just this, and there are I'm pretty certain this is not the only tax bill that will be introduced this next session. I'm almost certain this will not be the only one. So we will have other options, and it's going to see who falls on the side of tax relief and who falls on the side of adding more taxes. And I will bet you a quarter I know who's going to fall on which side. So that's one of the first ones that we have seen. I know there's a couple of other topics that we're going to talk about, but the school taxation and the actual school performance of our students is one of, I guess, the top three. And like I said, they're all going to be competing for number one, which I believe is going to be public safety. One of the things we'll talk about in the next segment, here we go again, is public safety with respect to drug addiction, because we know that the drug problem in this state is the main driver of a lot of the crime in this state and making us feel less safe. So in this next segment, we'll probably be talking more about that. But I'm just going to, because it was mentioned in this article, I just have to emphasize that, ladies and gentlemen, you in the listening audience, as Vermonters, need to understand that just because you voted in an election doesn't mean your job is done. This state digs itself out of a hole by more of you getting involved, knowing who your legislators are and what they are sponsoring, what they are working on, what they are voting on to give you relief or not, to add programs or to cut programs, to find ways to trim a budget that is, last year was $9.4 billion. And is this going to be the year that we finally see some budget cuts? I know the governor, his administration apparently has been looking at ways to buy down the tax increase that potentially for education could be 12% again, double digit again. So tax relief should be, and I believe will be, on the table, or at least presented to be put on the table if certain chairs allow the bills off the wall, so that Vermonters can feel a little bit of relief. Hopefully we will be able to feel a little bit of relief, because we all need it. We all need it. And there are also, I can tell you, going to be a couple of public safety bills that I think a lot of people will say have been a long time coming. Where people, the governor has talked about it. He actually, with the city of Burlington, has got this accountability court. Well, we need accountability in all of our courts. And some of the bills that are going to be introduced, I think, will introduce more accountability, which is what we all want to see. We all want to go back to a safer Vermont, where we have safer towns and municipalities, regardless of the size, regardless whether you are in a small rural town or you are in a larger city. So stay tuned. Keep an eye on what's going on in your legislature, because there will be bills introduced that will be looking to give you the relief you've been seeking for years. So we burned through the first segment here, ladies and gentlemen. We've got to pay some bills, but we will be right back. You're listening to Right Side Up.
Not everyone can get up every day and look for ways to piss people off. But here at GraniteRock.com, we do that almost every day. I can't tell you how many times someone's lost their SHIT and threatened to end us. But we're still here, pissing people off. It's almost like we enjoy it. And we've been doing it since 2006. That's almost 2 decades of news, politics, and opinion, and now podcasts, and we're just getting started. We believe in principles before parties and politicians. We defend free markets and individual liberty, and if that makes you mad, it makes us smile. We're like Grandma after she stopped caring what other people thought. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. I wanted to get into one of the next problems that needs to be addressed in the State House in Montpelier this next session. Another article from Vermont Daily Chronicle dated January 5 by Guy Page. Drug-related fatal crashes double alcohol-related crashes, Vermont police say. Let's see. Last May, authorities say drug driver Jason Ball of Olmsted, New Hampshire, was driving under the influence of heroin when the Jeep he was driving struck and fatally injured a 77-year-old resident of a local senior home who was walking along a route with the help of a walker. Diane Clementine was knocked face down into the grass, her walker destroyed by the crash. She died June 2nd in a Worcester, Mass. hospital. The driver and Jeep's occupants were known to police as fentanyl users. Ball, 23, was charged the day of the accident with driving while under the influence of drugs, serious injury resulting, and gross negligent operation, serious injury resulting. He was jailed without bail. The case is still in Vermont courts. A change of plea hearing is set for February 20. The incident is an example of what police say is a growing problem, driving under the influence of illegal drugs. Vermont police say that the likelihood of DUI crashes is twice as likely when the driver is under the influence of drugs compared to alcohol. Let's see. A CAX report quotes Vermont State Police Lieutenant Paul Revelin of the Vermont's Traffic Safety Program. Drugged-only fatal crashes outpace alcohol-only crashes often by double, and that's been consistent the last 5 years. State police are reporting a sharp increase in impaired driving arrest, with 953 DUI arrests recorded so far this year compared to 850 in 2024, according to Lieutenant Revelin. The arrests include cases involving alcohol, drugs, or a combination of both. Revelin added that the rise is partly due to more troopers on the road and an increase in officers trained as drug recognition experts, improving detection of drug-impaired drivers. Local police are seeing the same trend. In Berlin, Police Chief James Pontbriand said officers are responding to a growing number of crashes involving suspected drug use. Revelin also noted that third offense felony DUI charges hit a 4-year high of 365 in 2024. Okay. So we have a legislature that has gone out of its way in the past legislatures have gone out of their way to take the teeth, and I use those phrases because a lot of leftists like putting teeth into certain laws that they want to see enforced. So we have past legislatures that have taken the teeth out of fines and sentencing for certain offenses that, in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, have helped to make the problem worse. They've given us this problem that the article in Vermont Daily Chronicle is talking about. Past legislatures have done this to us. Legislatures that wanted to give us, quote unquote, safe injection sites that are nothing but safe. We've talked about these a lot, and it's probably going to come up again this session, talking about these where we have people wanting in our legislature, wanting to have a place for somebody who is addicted to go and maintain their addiction, not find treatment. We covered, I think, last week or the week prior, some changes that have been made because I guess in Burlington, they're finding it very difficult to cite a quote-unquote safe injection site. And it's no wonder. Who wants a magnet for drug addiction placed into their neighborhood? My guess is nobody. Like I said, there is a New York Post article out there, I think it's from the summer, where there is one injection site that is privately run because it's different than what the state of Vermont is looking to do, be the first state-sanctioned injection site. And that particular site, the residents of the neighborhood are doing everything they can to see that it gets shut down because of what it's done to the neighborhood. And I bring it up again with accountability, and we will see some legislation dealing with accountability, as I said in the first segment, coming out, being introduced this next session. But it needs to have enforcement. We need to have this legislation passed as quickly as possible so we can give the judges in the courts the latitude to hand down the sentencing. And what we need is the judges to hand down sentences for whatever the maximum is, to be able to set some examples. If you don't set examples and let the word get out that you're going to need to change your behavior because you will wind up in jail and you will do time for your crimes. There are a lot of people in this state who've been harmed. There's a lot of talk about harm reduction. The policies of harm reduction have not reduced harm. They've only made it worse. We've seen harm reduction only cause more victimization. Every one of us has friends or family or both who have been victimized mostly by criminals who are driven by addiction. And we need to turn the corner on this. We need to reverse course on this. Everybody, whether addicted or not, needs to be given the message, sent the message that you're going to be accountable for what you have done. If you've stolen something from someone, you're going to be held accountable. And the other thing is, some of these drug offenders need to be held accountable for all of the needles that they're discarding. How many of you have stopped on the side of the road where there's a turnout or a park and ride to either leave a vehicle because you're carpooling or to walk a pet, only to find that the place is littered with discarded needles? In this very environmentally conscious state, how is that acceptable? How is it acceptable that people who are doing an illegal activity with illegally acquired drugs are not being held to account for all of the needles that we're finding in this state? Why can't we have people who are found guilty of some of these crimes? Why don't we give them community service? Go and give them a quantity of needles that need to be picked up to atone for some of the damage that they've done. What would be wrong with that? Why is that not a good idea? Accountability needs to be a major part of what is happening this session in the State House in Montpelier. We need to be talking about this stuff. We need to be addressing public safety, the school taxation, the education reform, and the scores for our students, the outcomes, how well our students are prepared for the world when they're ready to leave school. But we need public safety as well. We need public safety as well. At the joint fiscal hearing, there was a transportation sector update, and it wasn't really very good as far as maintaining or staying ahead of the road maintenance, bridge maintenance, ditch maintenance, and repairs in the state. If we don't get to a place where our transportation budget is funding only transportation related projects and not other projects that are completely not transportation related, then we are going to be seeing our roads and our bridges and our ditches fall into disrepair. And in a state where we understand where flood mitigation is a big issue, that's the wrong direction to be going. So, like in the first segment, freezing taxes with respect to property taxes with respect to education taxes is a big deal. Finding the legislation in the judiciary that will give us the accountability that we all require for people who have victimized our friends and family for years now is another priority. And also maintaining our roads and bridges, doing what we can for mitigation, but also maintaining or improving those roads and bridges and ditches and all the other infrastructure that will keep our rural towns as well as our larger municipalities operating smoothly, regardless of the weather, regardless of the conditions, whether it be snow and ice or whether it be heavy rainfall. These are things that need to be discussed in a serious manner. And I'm pretty certain that you're going to find that there are people who want to talk about plenty of items, plenty of bills that don't take up some of the major questions, major issues that face us here in Vermont. There is going to be a tone-deaf reaction to what actually is going on in this state. And we need to get above that. And the way we get above that is your involvement, ladies and gentlemen. Your involvement. Stay involved. Keep your eye on what's going on. Your legislators, the committees they're in, look, healthcare is a big issue in this state as well. If healthcare is your big issue, follow the healthcare committee and see what the healthcare committee has taken up. Are they taking up anything that is going to maintain the ability for you to access healthcare when you need it and at a location that's going to be convenient for you? Because we keep talking about hospitals being on the brink and healthcare systems being on the brink. Well, having an aging population and having our healthcare system in the state that it's in this Vermont means we need to make some changes in that area as well. And improving competition, like I was watching a clip from, I forgot what show it was, but there was a publication where that came up. If we don't improve competition to make services more available, number one, and more affordable, number two, then we're never going to get ahead of those costs as well. So the affordability issue is not just property taxes. It's not just education taxes. It's the affordability with respect to health care. Health care is affecting our increased education taxes. It's increasing our costs in every household in the state. So there are a lot of things for you out in the listening audience that you can actually do to help the legislators who are in Montpelier, who are working hard, trying to find ways to maintain affordability or improve affordability in the state of Vermont. There are people out there working hard trying to do that. And this is why I keep trying to implore you to get involved, stay involved, learn the players, learn about the committees, learn about the bills that are being discussed. How did they get there? How did we get to a position where we're in? What acts and other statutes are in play that could be repealed or reformed that are not being discussed with respect to affordability? And that could be an issue too. So, again, we've come to another end of another segment. We need to pay some more bills, but we shall return momentarily. You're listening to Right Side Up.
Hey, this is Steve from Granite Rock. I'd like to thank Mike Tagliavia and Right Side Up for being part of Granite Grok and Grok Media LLC's podcast network. You can check out all our programs every night of the week at 8 p.m., except on Tuesdays when we do Granite State Live, which starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Please make sure to check out all our programming, including Grok Talk, Granite State Live, Justice for All, Right Side Up, Manch Talk, The New England Take, and our newest edition, The Elsa Kurt Show. You can also check out content from Shadowband, The Blue Collar Intellectual, The Generation Report, and the Vermont Podcast. And be sure to visit granitegrok.com for news and opinion you can't get anywhere else.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Tagliavia. Before we get into our next subject, I just want to remind all of our listeners, if for some reason you cannot catch us on WNTK radio, you can go to WNTK.com, find the podcast button, click on it, and you can scroll down and find any number of our shows from Right Side Up. There, you can find us on Podbean. You can find us at 802 Scoop Facebook, 802 Scoop YouTube. You can find us also on granitegrok.com. So I want to get into something that's, some will say, well, this doesn't really pertain to Vermont, but I think it does. I guess you saw over the weekend two events that happened. One was in New York City with our own Senator Bernie, where he swore in, he was the one who helped swear in Zohran Mamdani. So in New York City, as New York City's mayor. And this guy calls himself a democratic socialist, but we all know that means he's a Marxist. Anybody who's read any history knows that socialism is just one baby step away from Marxism, totalitarianism. So there was one part of the speech that Mamdani made that was very disturbing. He talked about replacing rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. Can somebody tell me, number one, what is so warm about poverty, about starvation, about shortages of everything from food to clothing? What is so warm about that? Because we have seen, history has shown us. I talk about education almost every show, and the reason I do that is because if we don't educate our young people, if we do not teach them how to think, how to be critical thinkers, instead of what to think, what to say, then we are not going to fix the problems in this country and then, by extension, help anybody who's not in this country fix what's wrong in their country. Collectivism is a disaster, ladies and gentlemen. It was a disaster in the USSR, formerly known as the USSR, which is the Soviet Union. Bernie Sanders knows that because Bernie Sanders has been alive long enough to see what was the USSR and shortages both of boots and other clothing and food. And he was promoting some sort of government-run grocery stores in New York City. My question, ladies and gentlemen, is why was he even in New York City dealing with New York City politics? Why wasn't he dealing more with affordability issues in the state of Vermont? That's what I want to know. That's what I want to know. But there's a couple of other... I found these on social media on X. And one of these is, if I can play it right, is New York City Mayor Mamdani's tenant director. And I think her name is Che Weaver. Let's see. There's a quote. "We'll transition from treating property as an individual good to a collective good. Whites especially will be impacted." What is with this statement? Why are we looking at race with regard to property? I don't know. Let me see if I can play this for you. I'm not sure if I'll be able to, but let me give it a shot here. So let me see. All right, hold on.
I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good. And we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
Okay. So what do you mean a different relationship to property than we currently have? This is quite unbelievable. I guess this Miss Weaver forgot she lives in the United States of America and hasn't familiarized herself with the Constitution of the U.S. But thankfully, this is only happening in New York City. But keep in mind, New York City is not far from where we are in Vermont. They're in a neighboring state, and the repercussions are going to be felt all over the area, all over the region. New York City, in my personal opinion, is going to be made less safe for those living not only in it, but around it. It's going to be less safe for those traveling through it. So if you live in an area where someone must drive through, or even close to, even if you're on a major thoroughfare through New York City, that doesn't mean you're going to necessarily be as safe as you once were traveling through what was the Big Apple. It's going to be a rotten apple pretty soon. What do you think? I've got another one I want to play for you. I think I can get through the whole video here, but this is another one that I want to play. And the reason I want to play this is because this is regarding Venezuela. We saw the second issue that we saw was that the United States, because of a federal indictment that was dropped by the Biden administration, I believe back in 2020, of Nicolas Maduro, and I believe his wife as well, but the Biden administration gave us this indictment based on his being a drug kingpin, basically. I'm breaking it down very quickly and simply, but it was there. So the second Trump administration, the feds this time, decided they were going to extradite Maduro. That's not what the left is calling this, but that's what I'm going to call it. And it was a pretty complicated procedure. It was a pretty complicated mission, but it was a successful mission, a very successful mission. It was a successful mission with respect to what not only no U.S. service members were killed, and we lost no U.S. assets as far as hardware. But I want to talk about it with respect to also what is this going to do, since we apparently got the head of the snake with respect to drug trafficking into the United States? Is this going to actually help mitigate the drug problem we have in the state of Vermont? I genuinely hope it does. But I just want to also, because there's so much noise out there, I just want to play this one video if I can. Let me see if I can do this. So I want to try to do this. Just bear with me 1 second. Let me turn this up and see if I can. The beginning of this audio is going to be Bernie Sanders, and then it's going to be an actual Venezuelan talking about the situation. So let me see if I can do this.
Trump has once again shown his contempt for the Constitution and the rule of law. Let's be clear. The President of the United States does not have the right to unilaterally take this country into war.
There's a particular kind of entitlement it takes to believe you can explain Venezuela to Venezuelans. And what's worse is that this so-called analysis often comes from people who claim to oppose appropriation and white savior thinking while doing exactly that. When narratives about Venezuela are formed without Venezuelans in the conversation, reduced to simplistic takes about foreign interference, and then broadcast as education through threads, carousels, or reels that end up whitewashing a narco-authoritarian regime, that isn't activism. It's the appropriation of a pain that isn't yours. Now, here's the reality. There are hundreds of political prisoners, including teenagers, many never properly tried. There are forced disappearances. More than 7 million Venezuelans, that's a quarter of the population, have fled the country, many crossing deadly terrain because staying was worse. Nearly half the population struggles to eat. Children are malnourished. Hospitals barely function. Journalists are silenced. NGOs are criminalized. And families, whole entire families, including mine, forced to flee. Given this reality, using U.S. force to remove a narco regime that has held an entire population hostage for decades isn't interventionism. It's a response to a regional security crisis. Venezuela has become a continental issue, destabilizing neighboring countries and the United States through mass displacement while serving as a safe haven for guerrilla groups, drug and human trafficking networks, and hostile actors like Russia, China, and Iran. Venezuelan sovereignty was lost long ago when the regime effectively handed the country over to these interests. Freeing Venezuela from criminal control is not only a just cause, it serves the stability of the entire hemisphere. And if we're going to move forward in this deeply polarized tribal moment, we have to learn how to hold two opposing truths at the same time.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was a Venezuelan who posted something to social media, and he was only able to actually post it. This was posted on X, and he was only actually able to post it after the U.S. actually went in and grabbed the narco-terrorist named Nicolas Maduro. And that's when X actually went back up in Venezuela. So we have more actual Venezuelans in the country talking about how happy they are that Nicolas Maduro, the dictator, who apparently didn't win an election, and apparently there are receipts, so I guess we're going to all find this out, but he was a dictator, a brutal dictator, and most of the country is celebrating. So, and if you only watch the mainstream, I'll say lamestream media, then you won't be getting any of the truth, will you? So I just am asking people, like I said, this to me is a state issue because of the drug issue. And I know there are national security issues as well, but the drug issue in this state is a big deal, and I'm very curious to see what taking down the head of the snake actually will do as far as drug issues in this state. I know our legislature needs to do its part, and hopefully this session we will take steps in the correct direction to fix those. But I just wanted to put out there what our senator from Vermont was doing in New York and talking about with respect to Venezuela, which he used to praise because it was a democracy that, you know, that he liked. That's the way that worked. Well, democracy, ladies and gentlemen, is two wolves and a lamb deciding on what's for lunch. Constitutional republics like the United States of America, which shines to the world as the place to go to, as the example of freedom, of how to have a country where you can pick yourself up by your own bootstraps and through hard work make it. Remember, rugged individualism not only made this country, it made this great Green Mountain state of Vermont. Rugged individualism, not collectivism. If I can be so blunt, collectivism sucks, ladies and gentlemen. It just does. So please do your best. We come to the end of another show. Please do your best to stay safe, stay informed, and continue listening to Right Side Up. Have a good day, ladies and gentlemen.